With the recent release of Monster Hunter Wilds absolutely killing it in the sales department, it almost seems like Monster Hunter Wilds is a near-perfect game. Well, sort of. As a longtime Monster Hunter fan, I feel that it's my job to mount up with a big-ass sword and go hunt some baddies with the crew and answer the question whether this game is worth jumping into. Does Monster Hunter Wilds land as one of the top games of the year so far? Is it a must-buy of 2025? Let's jump into it. So let's start off with our good. And when I think about Monster Hunter Wilds, I mean, it kind of gives off the same vibe that I remember playing from Monster Hunter World and a lot of other games, but I feel like this game definitely had a better combat system than what I remember back in the day. And, you know, we played a lot of Monster Hunter World, and we've experienced a lot of annoying-ass monsters over the years, but I felt like this game was a lot smoother when it came to how I actually can, you know, aim towards monsters, which in the past I used to kind of just have to swing blindly, like I actually had no coordination whatsoever and just pray that I swung in the right direction. But now they actually added aiming components and a lot of different various combinations and special abilities that you actually have per weapon. Like there were times where, you know, we played the beta, right, of Monster Hunter Wilds, and it was cool, but there was some, like, I felt like it was really dumbed down or really narrow in what they did. And then when they dropped the game officially, they added a lot more combinations, like even the piercing mechanics that make it where you can target a specific body area. And then once you see that there's weakness there, you cut off pieces of the limbs or whatever it may be, and you actually earn more items or more things you can use for upgrading your weapons. And I feel like that's kind of what ties into my other component. I feel like I always loved the Monster Hunter Wilds, I guess you say updates or upgrades that you can build. And that is something that is consistent this time around. I think generally for the most part, it was roughly around the same level. I think there might be a little bit less in this game, but I feel like when it comes to what you can upgrade, the different types of types that you can unlock, but I do like the fact that these upgrades are continuing. It makes it where your gameplay can be varied. And it actually makes it a little bit easier because you used to have to actually buy weapons every time you wanted to upgrade that weapon again and again and again. But now you essentially can upgrade any weapon to whatever amount of resources you have, which I think makes life a lot easier instead of having to waste money on buying, like, oh, I want to do multiple.
You have to use funds to forge, but they're so much lower when you go through a mission. Like it doesn't feel as impactful.
Yeah, I meant more like on the idea that when you used to play Monster Hunter World, you would have to buy a longsword and then you can upgrade that random longsword you have. But now you can upgrade any weapon to whatever you want because it's just a function that they always just give you now, which I think is great. So Frank, what is your good here?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's the core gameplay. I mean, when you think about Monster Hunter, like you've kind of mentioned, you're thinking about hunting cool monsters, using cool weapons, and forging new armors and new weapons to try out. And they've kind of nailed it in this game. You mentioned all the different weapons. You have 14 weapons, which is the same number that it is in Monster Hunter World. But the difference, and you kind of hinted at it, you know, when you play Monster Hunter World, you would find a weapon. There was like a handful of weapons that were fun to use, and then the majority of the rest of them were pretty boring. And in this game, they actually make it fun. And I think it's a combination of different moves that you can do. You know, to me, I enjoyed the majority of them. And one of my favorites was the dual swords comboed with the bow and arrow. And I love that you can have that primary and secondary, which really gives you a bunch of options on different builds that you can use. So they really nailed it. Again, trying out the different weapons, making the weapons fun to use and not everyone having a sword. Like you really see, especially when you go on these expeditions, a bunch of players using different things. And I tried out different things. And for the most part, it was a blast. So I really like the weapons. The monsters are well designed. They have all different effects. You know, some of them are larger. Some of them are, you know, they're all big, but some of them are like huge, taking up the entire screen type of monsters that you fight. It's really fun to play. So when it comes to the core gameplay of, you know, again, there's also a bunch of armors, the upgrade trees that you have for your weapons. So there is definitely that the core gameplay of Monster Hunter overall was hit with this new rendition of Monster Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that even certain upgrades of weapons actually give you variances of abilities, like when using the I forget the name of it, but it was basically like a long rifle, like that. It's a kind of like a it uses as a standard rifle that you have, but if you upgrade it to a certain way, all of a sudden the firing mechanic is different, or the the launcher is
different elements, different skills.
Yeah, and I always felt like that was always a great thing, that you had to now strategize in how you would go into an expedition, because you need to target whatever that monster's weakness was in order to defeat them, especially at the higher levels when you start getting into the expeditions rather than just the main story. Usually the main story is a lot easier because they kind of dumb it down because they just want you to beat the game. But the expeditions where you're targeting specific monsters, that's where you really have to do your homework and know how I need to go about attacking this monster. But yeah, I feel like overall for me, the combat definitely was an upgrade. Do you have any more good you want to add to that, or you're all good?
No, I agree. It's more, they made it more streamlined. I think Monster Hunter World was more difficult. The learning curve was a little bit bigger. This one definitely feels more streamlined, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, they made it more streamlined, but they still give you that dynamic feel of building out different builds, trying out different weapons. They really encourage you to try to do that. And again, like you said, strategize on what elements to use here, what skills will help me build up better strength here. So to me, that's probably one of the best aspects that they do in this game. That's separated from even some of its peers.
Before we jump into the bad, if you like this video, drop a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you're looking to support the channel, you can hit that join button and become a member for some awesome rewards. Now let's jump back into the video. And so with the good, let's talk about the bad. And probably my biggest bad of what I've experienced so far is the story is kind of ass, in my opinion. I feel like it's whether it's the dialogue writing or it's really the drawn out dialogue that they have for this game specifically, it just bores you. Like I think the whole, and I said this for Avowed, I said this for a lot of other games, when your best component is the gameplay and actually hunting monsters and going into combat, you don't want to take the player out of that for too long, because once you get to that point and you bring them to this dialogue where whether one, it's cringy, which whatever, cringy dialogue is pretty standard in a lot of these games. He's giving himself, he's dabbing himself up. We gotta do that, guys. Gotta dap each other up, like, really gotta be efficient. But all of a sudden you start getting to the point where it's just time consuming. And even to the point where it turns into a joke. Like on stream, I basically was talking about, it's like there's a long pause after every sentence. This Redditor has the answer. Dude, the long pauses get me every time. Let's take a look. All right, let's go. Look at this pause. These pauses are for Bill. Look at these pauses. We're like, why is he pausing for that long? Like, we have to think about our next word of the sentence. I really think that we should go forward. And it's like they're drawing out the story to almost like meet a quota of time that you need to hit. And it's kind of embarrassing, in my opinion. I honestly kind of sit there and just like laugh, because I'm sitting there like, there's no way someone wrote this and built in a pause on purpose. And if there is, it's on purpose for that reason. I don't understand what the whole mindset is. It's like literally, if I was sitting in a video, making a video right now, and every time I said a sentence, I had to pause just so I can get to the 8-minute spot to get that ad revenue. Like that's the equivalent of what I'm feeling when I see these cutscenes. It doesn't make any sense. And if the story was really compelling, then I'd say, all right, well, I wonder what they're going to say next. But the story's boring. The dialogue is ass. And then you have these pauses in there, like for drama, like these drama pauses, like we're doing an acting class or something. I don't really understand how that really works in this sense. But what's the bad that you felt here?
Yeah, there's a couple, and I'm sure you'll probably dive into this after I did. But let's, I'll stick with the story, but different from you about the actual story. I think it was okay. I didn't think it was, that bad. But I think the design of the main story missions is kind of where the big issue with me lies. And when I talk about like the story overall is 3 chapters. That's the main story. It's 21 missions, and then afterwards there's 3 chapters of endgame stuff right now. But the way they design a bunch of these main missions, they put, I mentioned the big thing that you think in Monster Hunter is hunting monsters, foraging stuff. And when you need to forge stuff and hunt monsters, you're exploring these different environments that they've created. But in the main story game, they kind of put you on rails. They hit you with a lot of these cutscenes, and then they also put you on these rails where they don't let you stray off from the path. It's kind of like reminds you of at moments with God of War and Gears of War, where again, like they're forcing you to look at certain things, walk a certain path while they're giving you dialogue. But it's a little strange for Monster Hunter to do that because you want to explore, right? For those games are a little bit more linear, you can kind of get away with it. But for Monster Hunter, they feel like they're forcing you down this path. And even when you try to pull away, they actually like draw your character back forcefully and tell you, hey, we got to go in this direction. We got to stay together as a group. So some weird designs that they do throughout the main story of this game that kind of pull the immersion out of like this Monster Hunter world and some of that combat and some of the material grabbing, like that you want to do in this game. So that's one of the big things too. And from a content side, I mean, when you take a look back, Mars, and I even asked a member in our Discord, which again, guys, make sure you guys join our Discord. We talk a lot about games there too. I asked him like, what are some things that you like and don't like? And he mentioned that when he's going through the game and he's playing it on his PlayStation, you can kind of see the progress that you make. And he was like, when I looked down at it, I saw like, wow, I progressed a lot pretty quickly. And I was feeling that same thing too. And it's because, the main story takes about 15 hours to beat, which if you just hear that, sounds pretty good. But when you compare it to its other games, the average time to beat Monster Hunter World was 46 hours, and Monster Hunter Rise, 23 hours. And when you look, there's 29 large monsters in this game at launch, and from the other games, Monster Hunter World launched with 37 large monsters. So you can see and Monster Hunter Rise had 46. So it's like, it's not just a little bit lower. Again, I'm not saying that has to be like double the monsters of what it's done in the past, but it feels a bit significantly lower in content at launch. And I know that they're going to be putting out Expedition quests, this month in March. They're talking about adding more monsters and DLCs by the end of the year. But just where it is at launch, it does feel like it took a bit of a significant drop in content.
Yeah, and so when you also put into the mindset of not only are you doing less content, you're not even incorporating. You have to also think some of the monsters that they incorporate in this game are also carries over from previous games. So it's not like you're
11 returning monsters.
Yeah.
So 18 new. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you have it where it's like you're not even creating new ideas at this point. And then on top of that, it's just you think of, all right, so there's less content, then technically wouldn't the polish be there? But there is no polish, especially talk about performance. Especially if you're playing on PC, it's disgusting. Oh, you're making pizza? Oh, I'll take that. There's beans on a plate. All right, pita bread. Okay. Ooh, yeah. All right, this looks not bad. Not bad. Dude, that bread. Oh. That bread looks like it was Jello just now. What was that? Skid marks. What are you doing? Dude, oh my God, that looks like Jello. It's there's so much stuttering going on. Now granted, they do have the performance and quality modes and balance modes, but it feels like quality is the only one that you can consistently get good rendering of what's happening, but you're sticking at a 30 FPS rate basically. Balance, you're trying to stay in between the 60 and 30, which you're at 40.
Yeah, and then you're at 40 on balance, which I played my playthrough, and Mars, you played on performance. Right?
Yeah, and I feel like it was definitely. There are times where I was running on rocks, and I feel like I was running on Play-Doh. I was just kind of like, I don't even know, like if I'm what I was running on at that point. It just looked like crap. And granted, yes, I'm one of those people that understands. Yeah, there's going to be problems in the launch of games. I get that, but at the same time, you have less content, which gives you the idea of, all right, that means we're spending more time probably on making this game, perfectly running well when it comes to its quality of gameplay. And the combat got a boost and all the things along those lines, but it just feels like you're lowering the amount of things that you have, and you're still struggling with things that are making the game feel fluid. On console, it plays better. On PC, it's way worse. Now, granted, they're going to probably add updates and everything, and along those lines.
PC had way bigger issues than console, but like you mentioned, Mario, we saw issues playing on our console in balanced and performance mode. You saw rendering issues, you saw graphical issues. We didn't hit the big stutterings or game crashes that we've heard and seen from the PC side, but for the console side, you did see some ugly warts once you got over 30 FPS.
And so with that being said, let's jump into our Galactic Grade. And, you know, Monster Hunter Wilds breaking records or hitting milestones like 8 million copies in 3 days is pretty
Crazy.
damn good, right? And I think Steam charts, it's getting up there, hitting like 40 million people concurrent at a certain
Not 40
point.
million.
40 million. Sorry, it was like, what was it 400?
600,000 or something?
600,000. Yeah, that's what it was. But I saw like they're sold.
40 million, that'd be
I mean,
unbelievable.
wild. Yeah, they had a lot of people playing concurrently, and you know, and obviously selling on units, it's doing very, very well. But my thing is this: I think, and maybe I'm gonna sound like a downer or something, but I don't know if it's hitting the same hype as what I was initially feeling about this game. I mean, me and you've played a lot of Monster Hunter World, and you know, we've been doing these expeditions for a long time. Sometimes we'd be like, all right, we're just gonna spend the Saturday and just play a crap ton of Monster Hunter and just grind through it, like, and we just kept playing and kept upgrading our stuff. And I just feel like I didn't feel the same when I'm playing Wilds, in my opinion. I didn't feel that same kind of attachment when it came to this game, and maybe it's because of the fact there's not as many monsters for me to hunt, or maybe it's because the rendering and all these issues kind of just feel like the quality is down and there's a lot of stuttering. Even the fact that multiplayer is still the same dumb method that Elden Ring follows, that Monster Hunter has done in the past. They really have not. They streamline stories. They make it where you gotta hold someone's hand and bring them back to the story, but they can't streamline multiplayer. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But with all that stuff being said, I'm gonna probably give this an 8. I think this is a good game, right? I don't think it's a amazing game. I think a lot of people throwing this to be like a 9 level or anything like that. I really don't believe that. I think an 8 for me is a good game. In me personally, I think buying it now, you can play a good amount of stuff. I think the after story expeditions is going to take a lot of time for you to play. If you're just playing this for the story, I don't necessarily think that's really what the intention of this game is. Like, and granted, I played it before, you played it before. We had more fun doing expeditions, hunting for monsters and upgrading weapons rather than just playing the story itself. But at the same time, I'm also going to be critical. You have less content than the previous 2 Monster Hunter games, and you're not going to get the same, I guess you say, high rating as I would have given those if I had my channel during that time. But the idea is that, you know, I feel like this game is still good. I would buy it now. But I really would want to see if they add how soon they add some more DLC content, because I feel like this game is limited on what you can do right now. But what's your grade, and should you buy this now, later, or not at all?
I am at a buy now, but I agree with you on the score. I am at an 8 out of 10. And again, could this game, I think this game ranges from good to very good, but it doesn't, it's missing components that can make it elite. And the big, you know, and elite in our scale is 9 and above. And, you know, a big part of that is some of the stuff that you mentioned. When you talk about, yeah, it takes 15 hours, that's a good amount of time for a main story, right? But you're also got to compare it to the games of its own past, not just the game in the industry overall. And it's taken a step back in content at launch. Now, where it ends up, like if you ask us in November, could this game get to a 9, right? If they add some of those expedition, which they plan on doing this month, they add DLC content, which they said they plan on doing before the end of the year, it could get there because the gameplay is a lot of fun. And for newer players, maybe not Monster Hunter veterans, it is more streamlined for you. It's a little bit easier, I think, than Monster Hunter World to pick up, and the learning curve is not as big. So I think even for new players, you can get in there, and when you get into fighting those monsters, it can be a blast. I don't agree that the story is that bad, but they do limit you when it's trying to drop you into this beautiful environment, but then they put you on these rails for a long time. And like Marsman's, you know, with the multiplayer, you want to play with buddies, but you got to invite them to your lobby. They got to join via lobby ID. You can link up at a party, but it can only be on the same console, you know, and then you can't really join a quest unless, again, they make contact in the main mission with the monster. It's like, can we get a little more streamlined? Can we grow in the future? They haven't really fully done that. So if you ask me, November could be higher, but I am at an 8 out of 10, but I am at a buy because the combat and the game overall is still pretty damn fun.
Yeah, and so with that being said, What is your feeling about Monster Hunter Wilds? Would you buy it now, later, not at all? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you like this type of content, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to support the channel. You can also join up on our memberships, which is also available with a lot of great perks there as well. Until next time, this is Marsman signing off. Game on.